Cosmic here. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about all the events that just happened this past weekend in Japan, or the Ultimate Battle EX as they were called, where players who went 5-0 or in some cases 4-1 due to placement walked away with a serial Goku, which by the way are selling for like 7k USD when you do the conversion and all that. So insane prices that we've been seeing. And as again, if you've missed my last video about the Japan meta, for me, I follow a lot of the shops and players, so I'm just going to try to do my part to celebrate that region as well and make sure we get a look at the overall global impact that set one is having and how things are changing. Of course, digital will help this a little bit, but I think it's also interesting to see how different regions react to the same meta of cards. And for one of the reasons that I really like this game is having that one unified look, where in Digimon and One Piece by comparison, they are a little fragmented where one region gets ahead over the other. So we get to watch this all happen in real time. Now, I do have to add my disclaimers up front. What you're looking at, and I'll put a really quick image right here, is all the leaders that went a 4-1 or 5-0 record that I could find on Twitter. There was 80 reported players, which took a lot of time to comb through, but keep in mind that there's obviously going to be much more 4-1s than there are 5-0s for these events. So do take that with a little bit of grain of salt, as well as the fact that these are going to be just 5-0s. It's something we think about from a super local perspective compared to some of the other events that we've been popping up, which are, well, strictly local, where it's like, 8 to 16 players. But I think it still adds a little bit more context of how things are shifting. So yes, these are going to be self-reported. That has its own little caveat. So again, there are going to be a little bit of disclaimers I have to be very upfront and transparent about, but I think it's still worth talking about and seeing how the leaders are shifting going into this meta, because as I covered in my last video, in case you missed it, we do have this, hey, is Red gonna be the new king, right? We saw a massive shift in attention towards the Zoro, or I'm sorry, Goku Universe 7, right? The just value Red aggro style of deck that we've been seeing. So the other part I want to acknowledge is that when I was looking at these lists, a lot of the players who went 5-0, shocker, were One Piece players. So I'm kind of not surprised at the same time to see people have a little bit more time to explore the meta. And I actually literally called this out last week in my video that, hey, I think Red is better than what we're seeing, right? Super underrepresented, I guess, right there. And like more people should be playing it, to now it's the played leader that we saw from the 4-1 and 5-0 category. Again, I only got 80 players. I'm sure there was a lot more out there, but I think I got a good enough sample size that pushes us in the right direction. And if we're expecting that a lot of the Japanese players who are doing well have that One Piece background, they're going to see, oh, hey, look, it's the Zoro deck now in Fusion World. I'm going to play that deck in Fusion World, right? They already have experience with it. They kind of know what they're expecting on turn over turn. And just overall, it is a very solid aggro deck, right? As we think about what is kind of the big baddie of the format, right? It's going to be the green decks. Now, no surprise, green still did very, very well with Broly and Gohan taking up a good chunk of the pie. But it is one of those things that we always go back to of like, just rush them down, I guess, right? It is the must make them have the answers style to the format, where you just need to be aggressive in your lines and try to push down Broly or Gohan as well. But Broly is going to be kind of the main talking point, I think, for a lot of people as we see how this week has shifted. And I'll talk about more in a second. And it just goes, hey, I want to make sure that I can apply enough pressure so that you can't just, drop back-to-back Brolys or then heal up and feel comfortable, right? We want you to play off curve. We don't want you to be able to ramp up freely and not get punished for it, right? So I do think that Universe 7 is going to be the best package for that. I think I did see exactly one starter Goku out there. So it's from one player that didn't have a lot of followers, but that's one of the other caveats I have to, add in here. Yes, it was all self-reported, but then I did go through and click on their profile, see how, what their background was, if they're a One Piece player. So there was I think 2 or 3 in total players that just didn't seem to have a big presence on Twitter, and they didn't have a lot of engagement with it. So it's harder to really count that. But I think at the end of the day, having 80 players to kind of reference and get at least some vision on what that meta is looking like got us close enough to get there, right? So what I know, the other part here that I have to mention is so many people ask me for lists. I mentioned in the last video, I'm going to mention it right here now. I recorded 80 players. Of those 80 players, 7 talked about a list, and 3 of them were from the same cooler list. So that's not a lot of decks that's getting out there to the Japan meta. So that's kind of the other frustrating point, right? It's like, unless it comes out of a major event or a TO that hosted something, it is extremely, extremely difficult to get lists. So I have 5-0 lists. That is the one good thing I'll say. I was able to find 5-0 lists for the majority of these decks. One of them is 4-1, but they got a serial Goku, so I'm including it, right? But this is it. What you're seeing in this video is all I got for lists. So let's just get into it, right? The first one I got to talk about, because this was actually in the last video, is the Sayaka Max. I believe I just pronounced it really quick, right? Like, I don't know. Again, I think they're a One Piece player. Their teammate was a One Piece player, if I remember correctly. Like, I don't know what their influence was or like how easy it was to spread, but there was 3 different players who said, hey, thanks to this one person for their write-up, and again, there's a good write-up. I think this one was the one that was locked behind a paywall, though, that said, hey, I took your cooler list, got a serialized Goku. And I'm like, wow, they just literally copied the same exact list over and over. So I think that this is going to lead itself well to even more people kind of swapping to cooler. And right, so the one thing that's going to stick out for a lot of people on this list is just the number of vanillas that we have, right? We have the 3-drop Frieza for 25k, and we also have the 4k King for 30k, right? And as we're shifting this meta towards, again, answering Broly, right? Week 1 was all, hey, super heavy Ginyu, do the crazy combo stuff, just aggro them out, right? And then people swapped to Broly and said, okay, well, now I'm a 25k base, so that doesn't work out. So while it isn't a true, like, you auto lose counter, it's close enough to where it's going to say there's very few lines that you're going to find in the Ginyu deck to climb over that extra 5k that Broly has. So then it's unplayable if you just hit Broly. Now, the last caveat, I think this is everything in my list, that I want to mention is, it does come up to a little bit of RNG in your Swiss, right? This is just a common thing that we have to learn to accept in Bandai games, right? You are going to have your good matchups and you're going to have your bad matchups. All things equal, assuming it's not a tier 0 meta, right? You do at some day have to be like, hey, I'm playing Ginyu, I dodged Broly the whole event, probably can get a 5-0, right? And for a lot of people, that was very true in the first week. And we saw a lot of this at both the 57-player tournament I covered in the last video, as well as locals. They just said, hey, there was one Broly player, I didn't play them, 4-0, 5-0, sweet, right? And like, yeah, we can all expect that, but is that something that you would be okay taking to a larger event? It can be, but for me personally, if I was really stuck on yellow, personally, again, this is where I have to add my own, like, part of it is I haven't had a lot of time to test with yellow or red yet. I've been mostly focusing on green and blue. I'm a blue main. Goku Black is going to be my jam. I just need to really wait for the digital client, so I can't speak to the same level for yellow and red, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who are more on the cooler train because, again, the 40k Frieza is just doing so much work when we think about how much Broly is impacting the field, and just getting to hit those like magical numbers very easily is a great spot to be. So who makes the best use of that? Spoiler, it's going to be cooler in this sense. And then again, when you have the ability to, you know, play your 4-drop, get to swing, use cooler's effect, get another attack in, play a 1-drop because you are playing quite a few 1-drops here, swing at the Frieza again, right? It just gives you that really great board control feel that, yes, you need to be more aggressive than mid-range, because if your deck is too slow, then you're falling into the part of, hey, Broly is just going to have enough time to set up. So I think we will see more of the cooler list kind of shift to a more aggressive package and be lower in the curve. But again, I think this list was definitely worth mentioning, because in terms of like a unified list that did the best, heavy air quotes, because again, we're just talking about number of serial Gokus or number of big event wins, like this cooler list is it. I think it's a fine leader. I definitely don't think it's going to, you know, share the same representation as green or red in set 1, but I think for people who have been asking time and time again, what do I play for yellow? What's a good leader? What's a good starting point? Apparently just take this cooler list and start from there. Again, I think that at least at very high level, that not anytime testing this, I think the 8 vanillas that we have here is a bit rough, but that's like the only thing I can say. Golden Frieza is good. Obviously, the 40k Frieza is really good at being able to attack the meta in the way that we want it to, so again, good starting point, but much as I can say there. From there, again, I do have the Twitter handles as well for the players I was able to grab for the 5-0 list. We have Broly, and we covered Broly quite a bit. I think at this point, the only really interesting part, in my opinion, comes down to like, hey, how many androids are you running and how many 0 combos are you running? I think we were at like 2 androids last week for lists, but as we see the rise in red and just getting more of those poppers, right? Like, getting our 5-drop to pop 4 or less, getting our 6-drop to pop 2, 3 or less is like, these are both cards that you're just really going to heavily rely on to make sure you can stabilize and clear the board. And then, of course, the Vegeta as well, which, by the way, I think this Vegeta is up to like $35 or something per SR, but, you know, set 1 problems in a Bandai game. Am I right? But I think like between those 3, like really key core control pieces, that's what's going to lead Broly to get to the end game. And then from there, it's like, your draw, your top 3 searcher, you have your Paragus engine, right, essentially in here as well. This one has been a lot more of a flex, but I think, again, it goes back to, right, obviously Broly being your best top end, there's no question about there. Getting to KO something and draw a card is just great, as well as being a 45k attacker. The androids, I think, is being a really interesting attacking point as well, because 40k is that nice break point into the mirror, right? So Broly, even at 25k, you're now looking at having to guard 20 to go up to 45, right? So 2 10s out of your hand just off the android is just really difficult in the matchup. And then if they answer that, you can generally follow up either Broly anyways and still get the value. So like, you play an android, apply pressure, they kill your android, you Broly them back, right? It just gets you so much tempo ahead that as long as you can stick that early, you should be fine. But again, I think this is one that it's going to be really interesting to see how it reacts to the meta, because as we're seeing now the shift with red, yes, you do want to be on 4 androids. I think this is definitely like where you need to be, right? Like 4, 4, and 4. Get all the early anti-aggro tools out there to try to stabilize where the Goku 7 decks are trying to rush you down. That said, I know that a lot of people might have more of a green heavy meta. So in that regard, do definitely build to your local metas, especially right now that we are, stock is limited. People are trying to build up their locals, what have you. But for digital, I think is where we're going to really see this come into play and how these lists are being refined more and more. And then moving on to Gohan as well. Again, green is just good. We're going to see the Broly again. We're going to see the androids again. We're going to see the Vegeta again. We're going to see some of the Paragus again. We're going to have the one-droppers of choice, right? The instant Kamehameha is one that's been coming up a lot on at least Twitter in terms of discussions if people love it and or hate it. So that's like the one that I would, stick out as like more of a tech choice. And then the one here that we have is the secret rare, which I know a lot of people are like, it's a 1 of, it's a 0 of. So that's another one where, especially if they find a board that's just like, or the Ginyu as an example, right? Especially for Gohan, because they can still hit you at 20. If you catch them with the secret and just blow up their board, right? Probably going to win you the game on the spot if they overextended into it, where Broly doesn't need it as much. So I think we are going to see more of a shift for Broly is probably just okay without it, because you have more of the absolute control pieces, where Gohan does struggle a little bit, and Ginyu can eat this deck alive sometimes, especially in the best of 1 game, that they just do the thing, they combo out really big, and you're like, well, I didn't draw the 7, I guess I lose on the spot, right? That is a very real situation a lot of times. So you do get the, once per turn where you can bump it up, but that's only going to save you for 1 attack, and Ginyu's going to hit you for like 9 times in a turn, right? So it's pretty rough. And other than that, the one thing that really stuck out with me on this list is, maybe it's just me being a blue player from other card games. Like, if it says draw a card, that's my favorite card in the game, right? So the one thing that really stuck out to me is not maxing out on your 1-drop draws. Get that in there, put that up to 4. But then otherwise, of course, they did this again, another 5-0 list. They did well with it, and it is something that we can expect to see some more variations on in the near future. Now, the red list. So again, huge disclaimer. I think this was the literally only red Goku list, or Goku 7 list, I should say, I found. I personally, there's some, choices here that, like, for me, again, I am team, you have to have the secret rare for this deck, right? Like, the fact you get the plus, the fact that it's a 35k, the fact that threatens the pop as well, like, we saw on stream how good that card can be, right? Exact scenarios where it slaps. So for me, I think it's a 2 of. It's not here. Other than that, I think people are finally coming around to the hit just being a solid, it's not Universe 7, so it doesn't get that 20 or the plus 5k from the leader effect, but at the same time, it is a self-awakener who can give you the minus 5k, which then helps out some of your other cards to have like a 10k swing, right? You bump up one of your Universes 7, he gets to shrink something by 5, that's a 10k swing, you're probably going to kill whatever you want. And then the other one, I think, is the big question of, how much top end can we really afford is the Beerus, because again, it's a card that's really great at buffing to give you that extra, or I should say BP manipulation in general, right? That's what this deck does. It is BP manipulation in the deck and makes math very difficult. And Beerus can give you that little extra boost that you need kind of on demand. But again, by the time that's coming down, the game should be ending. So it's one of those things that you should only need really 1 of to help give you that extra boost to close out the game. And then otherwise, the 1-drop, that's been making some appearances because it does go up to 20k. It's a 10k guard. Like, that's just all fine. But again, the vanilla is something that I think you're more so running just because you need another 10k guard that can be aggressive if you really wanted to. But overall, not the biggest fan of some of the choices in here. But I will give a shout out to Aspira. He literally just did a video on this. So make sure to go check that out if you want some more ideas for a Universe 7 Goku list. But as I mentioned in my video last week, and as I'm going to mention again, I think it's about time, right? We got to see Red kind of climb up in the ranks. I think this is just, again, the home run, slam dunk, all that good stuff for people who just really loved Zoro in One Piece. For those that loved that, I know it's a crazy thing to say considering how the meta went, but if you're just looking for that good, aggressive red deck that has some nice BP manipulations to help you clear through for some damage, this is absolutely going to be the list for you. And then lastly is the Goku Blacklist, which again got 4-1. Technically got a serial though, so I wanted to include it. And the Hesty846 was the player who climbed out with it. So again, this is one that we've seen like just on the outskirts. So many times we've seen like, hey, it got to 4-1, lost in the last round. So like, it is right there. Maybe this is copium, maybe I'm just like the true believer, but I think this list is worthy to be up there. I personally think, yes, it is a bit high rolly. Yes, it is a combo deck. Spoiler, I'm a combo player. I love this sort of thing where it's like, yes, you have a lot of draw, you have a lot of pieces to get you there, but it really comes down to you got to have those turns where you get that Goku Black on 4 and you just crush them in value, right? And we got to see on stream, so I guess another plug for Aspira, he did recast the streams because those are now private. We got to see the Goku Black into Gotenks combo 10k, get it back, combo 10k again, and I was just like, yes! Like, the value is so real when you pull it off. But the one thing I will say I got stuck on is May hasn't been in a lot of these lists, at least the ones I've been finding. This is like, you have to play for. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm wrong long term, but like my Goku Blacklist are starting with 4 May. The fact that you get to your Awakened side quicker, which is super important, as well as that secondary effect, which can be relevant and help you dig deeper. Like, you are literally the deck that says, I need to play Goku Black on 4 every single turn. Sometimes 3 if you get the energy and get lucky, whatever, right? Like, you gotta dig. You need every card that can get you there closer. And then also sometimes May is just like you're at 2 life, play it, choose 1 because it says up to 2, gain 1 life, and then it's a 5k combo plus whatever you just drew off life, which is then going to be an additional 5 or 10k the vast majority of the time. Like, it's just free extra combo points at that point as well. So definitely, if you have the extra resource, that is a line to take about as well. And I know we saw some of the other lists, but yes, 4 super combos I think is more coming around to everyone is playing 4 super combos, and I think that's definitely the right spot to be. And then the other thing that I mentioned too is the 2 Goku Blacks, the 4 costs. I know there's a lot of debate going on right now about these 2 cards in particular, but I am absolutely team you run 2 of them, right? 30k is just a really nice break point to hit right now, especially against every other leader. It's going to force them to have 15. So when you get the turns where it's like 40k into 30k attacking, it's just going to apply a lot of pressure and make it really difficult for your opponent to climb back. So in terms of this, like, this is pretty close to where I think it should be. I'm still stuck on where the 1 drops go. Like, in terms of where I'm struggling with the list, in terms of where I think could change, right? It's just this top, well, I guess don't count the top row because obviously you always run 4 Goku Black, right? But it's this top row. Like, this is where I'm not 100% sold on my numbers. Obviously, you need some number of Zamasus. The Trunks is great. The Gotenks is great. The 4 cost is great. I guess the Vegeta. I haven't actually played this one yet. So I think overall the Gotenks package is going to lead you very well into a 4 drop that could be aggressive into the Broly. So you just kind of have to run it. And I think it's very good for what it wants to be doing. So in terms of like where I think some of the flex points might be, the 4 drop Vegeta and then the 1 drop lineup, just kind of configuring, is it 4, is it 3 of, is there something else we want to run? But overall, I'm really excited to test this more. And I do think it is a very good deck. Someone just really has to find the last few pieces to make it work. So with that, that is a quick report on the Japan meta. Again, I will only be focusing on the Japan meta. Make sure to go check out Aspira, Universes X. Obviously, Eggman does a lot on his website and sometimes does videos for Dragon Ball Super Fusion World. They're all great at covering more of the global version, which I'll call of it, but I will be mostly focusing on the Japan region because, again, that's where I just follow a lot of shops due to my time in other trading card games. So, hey, I figured this is what the little part of the meta pie that I could help fill in for the rest. So, let me know your thoughts. Do you think red is on the rise? Was it a 1 weekend thing? I think that set 1 is going to lead itself very well to a red versus green format with, of course, yellow and blue getting in there. But I think more and more people are starting to see the power of Goku 7. So definitely make sure this is in your testing pool and get ready to face this at the regionals coming up. And I did get into both regionals. I don't know how, but I did. So I will be going to both Canada and North Carolina for this game because why not, I guess, right? So I'm looking forward to it and hope to see a lot of people there. But otherwise, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, subscribe for future Fusion World content, which will be mostly focused on the digital front, which is hopefully launching this week. We haven't heard yet, and I feel like they would have made an announcement if it is. So knock on wood, please no delay. Bandai, we need the digital client. I want to get gaming. So with that, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.